So we touched upon this a little bit in the last episode, but I wanted to do not a long piece about this, but I wanted to get into this a little more. More Perfect Union tweets out yesterday. UPS announced it will cut 20,000 jobs this year and close 73 buildings. This is on top of 12,000 jobs cut last year. The company said the layoffs and closures are in connection with our anticipation of lower volumes from its biggest customer, Amazon. Now, there's some dispute as to how much the tariffs have to do with this. I find it unbelievable that they don't have anything to do with it, but that is not the whole story. So we're actually going to take a look at a couple different articles which accentuate different elements of this. So the first one is The Guardian. UPS cites Trump tariffs as it announces expected layoffs of 20,000 workers. The United Parcel Service is expected to cut about 20,000 jobs in 2025 as a part of a larger plan to reduce costs and increase profits, citing changes in the global trade policy and new or increased tariffs. UPS announced the layoffs on Tuesday in its first quarter earnings report. The parcel delivery service said it made consolidated revenues of $21.5 billion compared with $21.7 billion about the same time a year ago. Additionally, the company said it would be shuttering 73 leased and owned buildings by the end of June this year. So that is coming up pretty quick, end of second quarter. The actions we are taking to reconfigure our network and reduce costs across our business could not be timelier, Carol Tomei, UPS Chief Executive Officer, said in a statement. The macro environment may be uncertain, but with our actions, we will emerge as an even stronger, more nimble UPS. The service currently has roughly 490,000 employees, about 330,000 of whom are members of the Teamsters Union. Last year, UPS said it cut its workforce by 12,000 jobs. In Tuesday's report, the company said it planned to make these latest reductions to its operational workforce, or those who are directly involved in package sorting, transport, and delivery. So they're not talking about cutting management, they're talking about cutting on the labor side. The job cuts come as Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs are discouraging some UPS customers from shipping as many goods, and Americans are anticipating continuous impact on U.S. and global trade. The company cited current macroeconomic uncertainty as preventing it from providing any updates to its previously issued forecast for revenue and full-year outlook. The Teamsters Union responded to the latest earnings report by reminding UPS that it was contractually obligated to create 30,000 Teamsters jobs under the current agreement. If UPS wants to continue to downsize corporate management, the Teamsters won't stand in its way, the Teamsters General President Sean O'Brien said in a statement. But if the company intends to violate our contract or makes any attempt to go after hard-fought, good-paying Teamsters jobs, UPS will be in for a hell of a fight. So because of, I would assume, right to work laws being on the books in so many states, there's actually a decent number of UPS workers who did not join the Teamsters Union. Of the 490,000 employed by UPS, only 330,000 of those are union members. Now, that is a majority, and I have to assume that in order to keep the shit to shoe level with the unions, that the layoffs will be mostly of non-union employees, which is a wake-up call for those who decided they were better off not joining the union, because
It would be great for their recruitment.
Yeah, it would be great for recruitment. That's for sure. That's for sure. But there's another element here. UPS is cutting 20,000 jobs. It's not what you think. So I think tariffs were the impetus for doing this as quickly as they're doing it in anticipation of decreased demand. But they forecasted that they were going to do this before the tariffs hit. And the real reason is probably even worse and even more bleak than the tariffs themselves. So UPS will cut 20,000 jobs this year, about 4% of its global workforce, the company said Tuesday. But UPS added the decision is unrelated to tariffs and is instead due to increased use of technology and a previously announced plan to trim its Amazon business. UPS in January announced a glide down plan to cut its business with Amazon, its largest customer, in half by the middle of 2026. UPS CEO Carol Tomei said Tuesday that most of the Amazon business that is giving up is not profitable for us, nor a healthy fit for our network. The UPS package volume from Amazon was already down 16% in the just completed quarter, which was a bigger drop than UPS had forecast for the period. UPS said it will close 73 U.S. buildings by the end of June as the next part of that glide down path. Now, here's the rub. UPS also said it expects to use more automation in its facilities, from sorting packages to label application to loading and unloading trucks, with 400 facilities becoming partly, if not fully, automated. So that's the real story, in my opinion. I mean, the tariffs are probably aggravating this and probably accelerating this. But in addition to the 73 buildings they plan to close, they plan to automate 400 more. 400 more, including loading, unloading, and sorting, which are all jobs that I did when I worked at UPS, which I'll talk about in a second. With this reconfiguration, we will also lessen our dependency on labor, she said. The CEO, we will lessen our dependency on labor. UPS did see some effects from Trump's broad tariffs of 10% on most imports, though, especially the 145% tariffs on Chinese imports. But the company is still uncertain about the ultimate effects. Tomei said customers that do a lot of business with China are not thinking about exiting the business, but she also said that many of them don't know exactly what their next step will be. Many are still hoping for a tariff rollback. Candidly, there's so much uncertainty around the China order, she said. We know what's been announced. We don't know actually if it will happen, and we don't know if it will stick. We think there are many things we don't know. UPS does believe its customers will feel an impact from the tariffs, and because of that and the pullback from Amazon, it forecasts its own revenue will fall in the second quarter compared to a year ago, but it said it is not ready to drop its own full-year guidance, although it warned it could adjust that in the future as well. So, to me here, there are two stories. One is the tariffs. The second is the move towards automation, which is what Lutnick was signaling will happen if they build
And
these
Basent.
factories, and Basent as well. So the sorting of the packages, as someone who did this, it's a brutal job. Basically, the way it works is you got guys unloading the trucks onto belts, and then, I mean, thousands of packages a day come past you, and there are 4-color belts, and you have to basically one by one load each package onto the belt. So you have the belt about your torso height. There's the belt right above you. That was the blue belt in my example. Right behind you, there's a belt on the floor, which is green, a belt at your torso height, which is red, and then a belt above you, which is yellow. And so literally all day, every second, you're grabbing up here, down here, red, yellow, blue. You're doing reps all day, 7 hours straight with one 10-minute break.
Jesus.
It is not fun. I hated doing that. The loading I thought was easier. Even though there's more organization involved, it's not that all day. But that is something they can probably automate. I always thought it was weird that you had like 12 guys doing that. I'd say, why not just run the conveyor belts into the trucks and then just have whoever's loading the trucks read the label and sort? It'll take a little bit longer, but if you're worried about the bottom line, you save a whole lot of labor doing it that way. Well, that was probably a stupid idea compared to what the geniuses in AI Overlordville have in mind. They'll probably figure out a way to just automate that. Like, a lot of these jobs are just going to go away. They're just going to go away. She said, we're doing this to increase profit. The bottom line is here, and I've said this every step of the way when it comes to trade, when it comes to immigration, they, meaning the rich, the oligarchs, the CEOs, the management class, will find a way to fuck you, the worker. They will always find a way to fuck you over. That is why you need an organized labor force, because their job, what these people get paid to do in the executive boardrooms at UPS, is to maximize profits for shareholders. Employees are not necessarily shareholders. In most cases, they are not shareholders, which means the executive's obligation is not to you, the worker, it is to the shareholder, and you, the worker, are considered a cost. They can call you a resource all they want. That's bullshit. They consider labor a cost. And what do business people like to do with costs? They like to minimize them. They like to minimize them. Now, I think the tariffs are pouring gasoline on this fire. I think they are accelerating this process because of the tariffs, but the writing was on the wall back in January. They seek to downsize, they seek to eliminate jobs and replace workers with robots and AI systems. And so, this in particular, when you're talking about UPS, is especially dire because number one, UPS, as was hinted at in these articles here, and it's true, has one of the strongest unions backing the workforce. UPS is widely known as having great benefits, not only for the workers, but for their entire families, pensions, 401ks, the whole thing. That's why I wanted to work there. When COVID happened, everything that I had been working on, with like retail and tourism, that was completely wiped out. So I thought I was going to have a new career. I thought, all right, I'll just work for UPS because the benefits are so good, because the union is especially strong. That's number one. Number two, the number one employer of men without a college degree is transportation and logistics, specifically trucking. So if they start automating these warehouse jobs out of existence, that is going to really hurt the working class in a major way because UPS recruits drivers from their preloaders. That's the way it works. You start out loading packages in the middle of the night, and then when you put in a few years doing that, you get a chance to drive the truck. They don't just bring you on as a driver right away. It's very rare that they do. You usually have to know somebody. You have to be the nephew of a manager whose nephew was probably a manager himself, right? So that's kind of the way it works there. So this is very bad. It's very, very bad. The fact that 1 in 25 UPS workers are being laid off, and this is just the start. This is just the start. They're saying there's a lot of uncertainty. This could get even worse.
Yeah, this is what I believe is going on at this point. Uh, Marx predicted that ultimately capitalism would yield to socialism and communism. Xi in China just recently gave a speech in which he argued that all of the evidence indicates that that historical determination holds up, that inevitably the world will move towards socialism and communism. Now, whether or not it's true that that's a historical inevitability, what Marx predicted that eventually capitalism would create a level of productivity that would allow for a society like that, I think is being proven correct. The thing is, the oligarchs who own your country, the oligarchs who own your society, not only don't want a world like that, they are terrified of the idea of a world like that because in a world like that, they don't have that power. They don't have that privilege. And in the end, that's what these people live for. What
Right,
is the difference between $100 million and $500 billion in terms of your quality of life?
right,
Zero.
right,
So why do you pursue $500 billion? Because you like the status and power. There's
right,
no other motive for it. To live in a world where people don't have their boot on the neck of workers, that's a terrifying world for them. That's what they live for, to have their boot on your neck, even as they implausibly tell you that they're on your side and fighting to restore jobs to America. Besant and Lutnick both made it very clear they know damn well they're blowing smoke up the working class's ass, even if the factories come here. When they were asked, where will the labor come from? Oh, it's going to be AI. Oh, it's going to be automation. The question of our time is, can you have capitalism without a need for workers? And the answer is no. The oligarchs' answer to that problem is feudalism. They are
right.
trying to reestablish feudalism. And if you look at a lot of the New World Order, globalists, own nothing and be happy agenda, I believe, as many do, that it's a depopulation agenda because they know they don't need that many people anymore. And if you had the more out of work, disenfranchised, pissed off people you have, the more of a danger the public poses to the oligarchs. Less people are going to be more manageable. I personally think that's what's happening right now. The idea that these oligarchs are fighting for you and are going to restore prosperity to the working class, that's a pipe dream. And if workers and, middle class people don't wake up and start thinking about a world after capitalism, they and their children and their grandchildren are going to wake up to a world of a dictatorial feudalism with command and control over the population, the likes of which no totalitarian society in history has even dreamed of.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And that is partly why they cling to this narrative. That explains the vicious anti-communism. That explains the just unhinged anti-China rhetoric, because
Right,
they don't want you to imagine life under any other system. I forget who said
right.
it. Name is blanking on me, but who
It's
said?
it's
You might
it's
know.
it's easier to imagine
Yeah.
the end of the world than to imagine the end of capitalism.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I forget who
Yeah,
said that. I'm blanking. Somebody in the chat will know.
he opens capitalist realism with it, but it's a quote from somebody else.
Yeah, I forget who first said that, but yes, yes, and that is going to become very, very necessary. Subtweet Batya Ungar Sargon, who is
Yeah.
the subject of our next segment.
Please clap.